It was a big brag, a major boast by the Walt Disney Company that Star Wars has made lots and lots of money, almost 3 times what they bought Lucasfilm for. Folks out there got excited, they started reading it, they started believing that we were wrong, that we had had poor analysis. And then, I read the fine print. And I'm here to tell you, Disney just admitted they lost a lot of money. We'll explain it right now. Hello folks, welcome back to the Pro Channel. It is a joy as always to have you here with us as we continue to explain entertainment and keep you ahead of the culture curve. Joining us to help do so, we have Ozark Matt and Stuttering Guitarist. Once again, gentlemen, welcome back.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we are here to talk about Star Wars because, despite the best efforts of those who would mislead, we are here in the lead, sharing with you exactly how much Star Wars has lost. And here is the tweet that starts it all off. Discussing Film put out a tweet on March 13th that said Disney has made $12 billion from Star Wars, earned back almost 3 times what they bought the franchise for, which was $4.05 billion. That according to an SEC filing, which is Disney's white papers where they're trying to fight back against Nelson Peltz. And this was my response. This is idiocy. They didn't spend just $4.05 billion on Star Wars. The sequel trilogy cost more than $1 billion. Each Galaxy's Edge cost $1.1 billion. The Disney Plus shows cost money. The hotel was $700 million. If they've only made $12 billion in revenue before taxes and theater cuts, they're way in the hole. And we're not here to be mean to Discussing Film because, as it turns out, they're just reading, gentlemen, what Disney has to say. They're just literally reporting what Disney says. The difference in us and Discussing Film is that we don't take Disney at their word, and we think they've earned that. Now, Disney accidentally also throws Star Wars under the bus here, but this is the page that all of this is coming from. This says in the SEC filing, and it's a pushback against Nelson Peltz because Bob Iger does not want Nelson Peltz on the board. He doesn't want Jay Rasulo back. Analog, he says. Enduring franchises highlight our powerful IP and unique monetization capabilities. Now, you're going to notice that Frozen is alleged to have made 10 times its investment costs. Toy Story, just the franchise, is alleged to have made 5.5 times the investment cost. Avengers 3.3, and the lowest performing of these major franchises, Star Wars, which is sub 3. But even to arrive at those numbers, we have to read the very, very, very fine print. And folks, we have this blown up, about as big as we can get it to be blown up, and we still basically cannot read this print. But I will do my best. Here is how the Walt Disney Company in this SEC filing manages to pretend that Star Wars has almost 3 times its investment back. And notice, too, that there's a little tiny number 5 next to that X. That's because there's another piece of fine print. But here's what it says. I'm going to do my best to read it. Company data reflects the ratio between revenue and investment on titles released following Disney's acquisition of the IP. Revenue reflects aggregate 10-year revenue streams, both generated and expected. Directly associated theatrical releases, including theatrical, home entertainment, TV play, and more, and consumer products, does not include derivative revenue streams, such as park attractions, nor does it include DTC originals associated with those franchises or pre-established franchise consumer products revenue. We can keep going, but here's what you need to know. In order to prove that Star Wars has 3 times its revenue return than the investment they put into it, they have to, quote-unquote, anticipate over 10 years what they think it will make from the time they release these products. Okay, so that's just, number one, all that's BS then. And then number 2, they specifically say in the extraordinary fine print that is so fine that zooming in pixelates it to the point you can't hardly read it, they also eliminate anything to do with theme parks. Now, why do they do that, gentlemen? Because if they don't do that, then what happens is they have to admit the Star Wars Hotel destroys all of this because that's a $700 million investment down the drain. Guys, before we get into the real numbers on how much Star Wars has made or lost, your thoughts on this fine print and exactly how Disney is working to prove that Star Wars is great, and yet they actually threw it under the bus because compared to Frozen, this is embarrassing.
I actually don't think the 700 million loss, it reflects the true loss of, let's just say, that one hotel disaster, which was a public relations disaster. It left fans really unhappy, and it took away from the Star Wars brand overall. $700 million, yes, an accountant found that and showed it to the world. We lost $700 million on the hotel. You also lost a tremendous amount of goodwill from those families who felt exploited and overcharged for experience that they didn't get. And so I think the loss of the hotel is easily $1 billion. If you just calculate those families going home, being kind of dissatisfied with Star Wars, then they don't spend the money the next time they're in the store, the next time a kid's one of their children wants something. So that just alone right there, we could go on and on, but let's have fun with that. Yeah.
Because the hotel at minimum cost $700 million. Okay. We know the exact number that the two Star Wars lands in Disneyland and in Hollywood Studios at Disney World cost. They're $1.1 billion a piece. And so we know then that's okay. So that gets us almost to $3 billion on top of the cost that they took to buy Lucasfilm.
Easy.
On expenses.
$3 billion easy.
Well, let me show you this. I think you're going to like this. And SG, I want you to weigh in on this one. Let's take a look now at just the live action series. And isn't it interesting that when we look at the fine print over there in that document, it doesn't appear that we have to count these in terms of expenses. And you know how we don't have to count them for expenses? Because Disney Plus technically is paying for them. Oh my gosh. So Disney Plus buys these and that offsets the expenses. So here's the amounts, okay? Essentially, every time we have looked at the UK tax filings that reveal how much these cost, they're about $200 million a pop. So Ahsoka, The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Andor. But wait a minute. We have multiple seasons in some of these. So The Mandalorian, we have 3 seasons. That's $600 million. Andor has 2 seasons. One is not yet out. That's $400 million. And Ahsoka somehow seems to be getting a second season under Dave Filoni. So how many seasons do we have at $200 million a pop? Ahsoka gives us 2. The Mandalorian gets us to 5. The Book of Boba Fett is 6. Obi-Wan Kenobi is 7. And Andor is 9. Gentlemen, that is $1.8 billion in expenses for Disney Plus shows. And I don't know how you show a profit off of Disney Plus shows that don't seem to move the needle outside of The Mandalorian season 1 and 2, don't move the needle in terms of subscribers. SG, is this all starting to look a little bit more fishy now that we dive into what's really going on?
It is, and this is the perfect time of year for this. It's tax season. So I know an athlete who got I don't know him. I know of him. He got a $13 million signing bonus. The government took $8 million of it.
Right.
For him to say, put $13 million in my bank account because that was in the agreement, you'd be like, well, wait a minute. No, $8 million of that's gone because you had to pay taxes. And most of us have that. You get your adjusted gross income. You're like, well, here's what I made, but in my life, when I have to buy $100 of groceries, I can't say, well, just take it out of what was taken out of my check instead of me paying you $100, because my take should have been blank. And I think they're playing this game hoping the public doesn't realize that the numbers have other issues to deal with, like paying for cast. I've heard the craft services bills for some of these things are through the roof. I don't know if they're eating, but it's and then you see the filings in England where they have to specifically write out the costs of these things, and that's a big frustration because you, as long as you know someone who knows how to get to it, and of course you always do, you see the numbers they spent because they have to report it to get the credit. So
right.
Between that, the theater's not doing this for charity, and especially on Disney Plus, that model is to get more subscribers but I think I've seen more free subscriptions given out than paid in the past 6 months.
Well, they've been
So
doing
it's
a
like,
$199 deal.
take that money.
Power to the $199. They've been giving out their own version of the $199 to anybody in Canada. If you want Disney Plus, they're doing a deal right now for $199. You bring up the point about the tax filings. I want to show folks this because, again, this is math so easy that a first grader can do it. Well, maybe a second grader, but you get the idea. And we have some bozos out there, the buck-toothed bandits, who are perusing around Twitter and laughing when they see discussing film. Maybe we'll pull that up in a moment where they're like, those YouTubers sure have egg on their face. And it's like, no, I don't think so. Take a look at this, guys. I'm going to show you how the magic trick is also pulled off. This is something we've got out of the numbers, and no slide against the numbers. We love this website. This is a great website. What they're doing is they're showing the production budgets that Disney declared. So if we take a look at this, you can see Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker was declared to have $275 million. That's the original allocation. You can see that Solo: A Star Wars Story, $275 million. Again, that's the allocation. But what's the real cost of these movies? Well, it turns out that they're way more expensive. And this, again, gets us into figuring out how Disney, quote unquote, proves that Star Wars has made back this massive investment. It's because they're likely using the allocated numbers, not the real numbers. So here's what we have out of Wikipedia. What's the most expensive movie of all time, according to Wikipedia? And those notes, folks, you can go click on them. You can go to this exact same article, and you can go to this, go to the reference to find this. But the most expensive film of all times, Star Wars: The Force Awakens. How much? Actually, $447 million is how much that it actually cost. So how much did Disney say the production budget was? $306 million. What was the real cost? Way more. The most expensive film of all time. And guess what? That production cost, that doesn't include marketing. And what we've heard is that it's essentially $200 million that Disney spends on marketing for Star Wars films. The Rise of Skywalker, $416 million. What was Disney's allocation that they put out in the public? $275 million. See the gulf that is existent here? Now, here's what we believe. Based on looking at all the numbers for all the Disney films put together, they made in profit $1.75 billion off of every Disney movie that they've released with Star Wars. That said, the reason they stopped making those movies is because that cratered after the first two films. So The Force Awakens, we estimate, made something like $700 million in profit for Disney. The Last Jedi made something like $500 million, but it probably killed the franchise because thereafter they could not do anything but either barely break even or collapse, as we saw with Star Wars' Solo Story, Star Wars Story. If I can speak English, but so that is what's really going on here. If you look at the real numbers, and let's go back now to this.
Pearl,
yes,
I hate to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
But why is something like The Rise of Skywalker so expensive? It's because they didn't have a plan. They kept changing their minds midstream. They didn't really believe in their story. They called back an old director and they had a plan. They threw their plan out the window with the director, with the script, with the story arc of main characters. So you don't have to make these films. I just wanted to throw this out there the budgets don't have to be this big. They're big because they're incompetent at keeping their costs down.
Yes, because they don't have a plan. They do massive reshoots. Let's bring SG back in for the conversation. I think
though the way that Disney views this, quite honestly, is flipped around. You and I in the audience, we see this as, wow, you spent a lot of money on this movie, so you barely made anything. But I think they think we're supposed to look at that number and go, wow, that's a point of prestige. Ooh, that's an elite film. Only a Star Wars or only a Disney film, only a really big film can achieve such a massive budget. And I think that's their view of it. They almost themselves see a large budget as, because this isn't their money at the end of the day. It's your money, it's your pension plan's money, it's everybody else's money. But I think we live in that world where people ascribe to what kind of card you get. I got this car. Well, my car just happened to be this more expensive. It's not like it's a better car or whatever. So it's basic reptilian human being response to that. I think they view it in a completely different way, and they're proud to see that. I'm embarrassed to see the underperformance of Star Wars. It's embarrassing.
I agree. And here's how we know it's underperforming. Okay. So, and we know it lost money. I mean, folks, listen, we've run the numbers over and over and over. The way that you manage to make this not lose money is you don't count the Disney Plus show's expenses, okay, which is close to $2 billion. You don't count the cost of theme parks and hotels that are Star Wars, which is close to $3 billion. Okay, so there's more than the cost of buying Lucasfilm sitting there that we're not going to count. And still, gentlemen, if you play every game in the book and you put the print so fine that you can't read it when you zoom in even, Star Wars still underperforms. And Disney is setting the stats up so that they look the best they possibly can. And Star Wars is performing at less than a third of Frozen in terms of ROI. Star Wars is performing less than Avengers, and don't forget that Avengers only has a few films, like 3 films in its roster, maybe 4 films, I don't know. But look at this. This is what's amazing. If you look, everybody take a look at this. This is so important. In the fine print, it says that they take out the expenses. They're not counting the expenses on theme park additions. But in the graph, they count things like Star Wars Galaxy Edge. They count stuff like Star Tours Adventures, which is a ride. They count Adventures Campus at Disneyland Resort and Disneyland Paris. But in the fine print, they say, oh, by the way, we're not counting expenses there. So if you don't count expenses, SG, you were exactly right earlier. You know, this is a dodgy accountant. And what this all comes down to is truth versus post-truth world, right? So we live in a world, and this has been going on all week, every story we've covered. People know what the truth is, and people know, like, what the narrative is. And when those don't align, you're the bad guy. It doesn't, because this is just a power play by Disney. This is just to get those fake headlines that will trick people. And if we go back one last time, and then SG, I'm going to get your thought on this. If we go back one last time, here's this poor person, Truly Pete, 72%, probably a wonderful person. We love you, Truly Pete. 342 likes, 30,000 views. What does Truly Pete say? People can say what they want about Disney Star Wars, but it sure is profitable. And it's not going very well for them, by the way. I mean, the rest of the comments are not good. But that's the idea, is to get people like Pete to look at this. Disney has made $12 billion from Star Wars, earned back almost 3 times what they bought the franchise for. No, you're in the hole by billions and billions of dollars, and only through cute little fine print details and tricks and shenanigans can you get a narrative. But nobody out there thinks Star Wars is more popular today than it was when they bought it. It's way less. SG, I'm going to give you the final word on this one. What are your thoughts on Star Wars in its current position today versus where it was in 2014 versus where it was in 2012?
I'll go back even further. I grew up in a small town in Michigan, and before the movies started, we'd go hang out at the grocery store across the street. Very, class A. But I saw my friend, who was a senior in high school, walking out of the toy aisle with a new brand of Star Wars figures that had a collector's coin in the packaging. I can't remember what series that was, but it was the same characters they'd been selling since 1975, and it was just redone in a way, and you got this special collector's coin, and he'd buy 2, one to keep in the package, one to display. And I don't see that. We see Ollie's has a very nice supply.
Yes, we do see Ollie's. What a great comparison.
That was The Power of the Force, 1985. And that was the last time we saw Star Wars action figures on the shelf for 10 years until 1995. And they introduced the orange and green card, The Power of the Force again. And so we've lived through an era where Star Wars kind of went away from the toy aisle for 10 years, and it has again. Yes, it's ironic. So interesting point. I really appreciate that memory. I'm with you, man.
Now, SG, you do a very interesting thing. You're highly successful, whereas Star Wars is not. You've been designing guitars, and I see one to what I assume is your left. I don't know exactly how you get your camera oriented. Can you tell us a little bit about that guitar real quick, please?
Absolutely. One thing we wanted to try, and you see this F, guitars have an F hole. That's Frank Stallone's signature. I had it pulled off of an autographed picture, sent it to the CNC worker, so that we could put his F on all of his guitars. He still got the same resonance. The pickups were inspired by Johnny Lang, who's the first guy I saw use this kind of configuration. These are handmade in Las Vegas. Actually, almost everything is. We have a shop out there. I use it for everything, and it was 15 years of being a worship director and playing gigs all over where I wanted to switch guitars, and I knew I needed a lot of sounds. And now I'm developing not quite as versatile, but a much more affordable version, because we see a marketplace where people want to be into these because they are very cool. They look, this is this way.
I love it. And you sent me a video of you playing, and I've been so happy to watch something you've been working so hard on, finding success, and people like Sylvester Stallone's brother, Frank Stallone, loving this guitar, and the folks who are buying it, loving it. And we're just so happy for you. And folks, that's really what it's all about. You don't have to fake success if it's real. And Star Wars doesn't have to have a paragraph of size 2 font in italics with the thinnest font they could find. If you're successful, you don't have to do that. You can put up the big numbers in the marquee without any fine print. I want to thank Matt and SG, both of you, for being here today. Both of you are finding success in different ways. Matt, you are working in writing stories. Could you tell the folks real quick about what you've been up to?
My latest short story was published in a monthly Midwestern newspaper called The River Hills Traveler. You can read Starseed and the Beaver King at riverhillstraveler.com.
Fantastic. All right, folks, get out there and be successful this weekend. Go do good things. And when you see headlines that make you pause and go, I don't think that lines up with reality, then it's probably a good idea to check the facts behind it. And that's why we were here today, to tell you that Star Wars, it ain't making money. It ain't. It is not. It will not until they get their heads out their bohunkuses. That is we'll make that a noun now. And get rid of Kathleen Kennedy, because whether you like her or not, whether she's a good person or a nice person or anything in between, and we don't think she is, she's not successful at this. This is not working. Folks, one thing that does work, though, click the like button, share, subscribe, click it, stick it to the algorithms, hit the notification bell, drop a comment down below. Let us know your thoughts on all of this, and tell us, when you crunch the numbers, how much do you think Disney's Star Wars has lost? For us, we're actually waiting right now, because we are waiting on tax filings in April that we will look at Indiana Jones, the Dial of Destiny. And then, I know that's not Star Wars, but that's Lucasfilm. Then do we have a report on the way. Folks, as we always say, as we wrap these up, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.
What? What? I put out a tweet of a fat minority with a booger in her nose, and I said, "This is an empowered woman." And Katako retweeted it.
You don't have your own X account, do you?
Oh, well, I actually created it a while ago. The greatest troll I've pulled off in a long time. Do you know how many things I've secretly tanked?
Oh gosh, I hope not. That would make me legally culpable. But, what are you talking about?
Sweet Baby Inc.
Huh?
Yep. I'm the...
Shut up.
I'm the CEO. Yeah, no, seriously, look, this is my profile picture. Everyone's just AI. It's great. I'm so excited to gaslight everyone and see what they're gonna like next because they think it's socially obligated.
Wait. So you're... No way. You're
Yep.
the CEO of Sweet Baby Inc.?
Maybe. But first, you should see the jewelry company I created.
We're gonna get sued. Oh.
It's yeah, it's gonna be good.